Good evening. Welcome to the Analog Room and my 60th anniversary of being a professional musician. So I thought I'd tell you a few little tales about how I started. Thank you. And I just want to tell you that Mike Smyth has been playing some of his rare records. Mike owns a shop called Phonolux on Nolensville Road, and if you've never been there, you should go there. It's something else. They have vinyl, CDs, but it's a special place. Been there a long time. So thank Mike for playing his records, and he'll be playing some more later on this evening. 1963, I walked out of the insurance company I had got a job at, and they said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to go and play rock and roll." And I got a round of applause from the guys in the room. It was quite something, and I was young, very young, and didn't really know what I was doing. But what inspired me was I was taught to play the piano when I was very young, and I didn't really want to learn to play the piano. You know, Green Sleeves, Country Gardens, all that stuff. I wanted to play football, or as you call it here, soccer. It's football because it's played with the feet. What you play here is rugby with armour. So anyway, I'm playing football in my local park, and it's 1956. We played this game where we would set up goalposts with piles of clothes on either side. So there was a lot of arguments about whether it was a goal or not. But anyway, we finished the game, and a guy walked in, an older guy. He was probably 14 or 15, and he had a suitcase. And he put it on the bench, and he opened it up, and it was a wind-up gramophone. If you've ever seen one of those, you're probably all far too young. Well, Steve, you know what I'm talking about. He wound it up and he laid this needle on this 78 record, and it changed my life. And it was Little Richard singing Long Tall Sally.
Gonna tell Aunt Mary about Uncle John. He claimed he has a misery, but he having a lot of fun, oh baby.
Whoa, what is that? And he said, "It's rock and roll." I said, "What's rock and roll?" "Music." "Yeah, but that's not what my parents play, and it's not what they're teaching me to play." So I went back, and the piano never looked the same again. I sat there. We had a room in the house that had a radiogram with a record player in it. And on that record player, you could put speeds from 45 to 78, 33, but it had a 16. And the 16 is sort of just about half 33 and a third, so it takes it down almost exactly an octave, but it slows it down by half. So I used to play Jerry Lee Lewis albums and put them on 16 and work out what he was playing, the notes. There were no schools of rock and roll back then. Music schools only taught classical music. They didn't teach anything else. So I sat there for hours in that room playing those notes, and I can still play some of those things. Not as well as I could back then. I was just so young. And then I joined a band at my local youth club called the Blue Suede Shoes. I was 12 years old. Well, nobody wanted a piano player because it was the era of the Shadows and Adventures, instrumental music. The guitar players suddenly became heroes. Nobody wanted to play bass, so I said, "I'll play bass." So I made a bass. It was terrible. I think about it. I had no idea about the harmonics on it. I just made this thing that looked like everyone else's bass. And so God knows what it sounded like. But we used to sit in this basement in this youth club, and I was just hooked. I just didn't want to do anything else. My father said to my mother, "He sits up there for hours playing the same thing over." And she said, "He's happy. Leave him alone. He's happy." So by the time I was 14 or 15, I had sort of bought a Hofner bass, not a Paul McCartney model, a twin pickup that looked a bit like a Fender. So the reason I bought the Hofner was because it was cheap, because I went into London to look at a Fender bass, and I walked in the store and I asked, "How much is the Fender bass?" which was about the same size as me. You know, I'm not much bigger than that now. But I said, how much is the Fender bass? He said, it's 128 guineas. And a guinea was 21 shillings, which is £1 and 1 shilling. They still use that for horse racing, the 1,000 guinea horse race, and that's what it was. So that was enough money in those days to buy a car. And I went home crying. It was like, I will never get to own one of those. I mean, oh no. So I bought this Hofner, which I used to take to bed with me, and a radiogram. My cousin came over, who was a bit older than me, and he said, you know, you can plug the bass into the radiogram. Really? He said, yeah, and it'll play back through the speakers. So now I could play bass to the records. Instead of the piano, I started playing the bass. And that was my first gig in a proper band, was playing bass. And eventually I made enough money to buy a Fender bass. And it was a 1961 Daphne Blue Fender Precision bass, which I paid £100 for. They're probably worth 20 grand now. Vintage guitars have gone crazy. I played it in a local band, a little sort of semi-pro band, and we were sort of very keen and did all these funny little gigs in schools and nurses' homes and things. And then I decided, well, maybe it's time to go back to the keyboard.